Hi, folks. It's Bruce McDonald here. It's 12:21 a.m. and it's Thursday, the 10th of April. Got my shower and extra bathroom coming in. Looking pretty good, actually. Um, and then after that's done, holy spumoli, I'm open for business, man. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but we'll see. I don't know what kind of world that we're gonna be living in, but who cares, man? Just always hope for the best. Tonight I'm gonna take a break from the Solomon series. And it's just because, a lot's come up and I want to address a few things and do kind of a walkabout, but I'm going to try to touch upon spiritual protection. Okay? And what is going to be attacked in the next while. Okay? And while is, I don't know. Like, I don't get into the timing. I don't get into the math. That's astrologers, numerologists, people like that. Okay. I just take my moments as they come and I listen to my heart and I look at my spirit, which is the inner landscape, images, feelings, impressions, things that come to me. And then I sit in my being, my soul. I sit as soul, not my soul. I sit as soul in my being and study my spirit until the spirit has no more ripples in it. And then everything's okay, man. Now, I've had some pretty intense experiences in the last week or so. And it has to do with people I communicate with off air. A lot of you reach out to me. By the way, I may have to put some limitations on it. Some days I can be 3-4 hours in digital communication, video communication on the computer with people, but 3-4 different people. Everybody needs an hour of my time, and I'm happy to give it. But it's going to reach a point where I can't because there's just too many people. But what I will do is I will aggregate what I think intuitively is going on with people and try to address it in a podcast. You can always reach out to me if you know how to get a hold of me. It can be email or Microsoft Teams, which took over for Skype, or WhatsApp if you have me on that, or Telegram, or Facebook. Um, you can leave a comment on YouTube or Substack. You can give me a direct message on Substack. Man, there must be 7 or 8 ways to communicate with me. And some mornings I wake up and there's just a load of messages scattered over a half dozen platforms. And I wake up, and I pour a coffee, and I read my messages. And they're usually about the podcast the day before. As I said, I'm grateful for your gratitude. It's a tremendous feeling to be of service, and I'm happy to be of service. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about spiritual protection. Now, some of you listening to me have never been spiritually attacked. You've never, I shouldn't say it's a spiritual attack. That's actually not the right language. And I'm kind of like a language Nazi, right? So I mean that in the soup Nazi sense from the Seinfeld series, those of you who are about my age. So I'm kind of a language Nazi, so that's not really, it's not a spiritual attack because you can't really be attacked spiritually, nor is there any such thing as a spiritual war. In the highest regions of heaven, there's no conflict. Okay, so stop saying it's a spiritual war. It's a psychic war. It's taking place on the psychic planes. Okay? Now, the psychic planes, just like the material plane, are all animated by spirit. But what happens is the quotient of the negative counterbalance increases as the dimension descends until materiality. And then the presence of the negative is very, very powerful here. Now, if you go up to the astral, they have special closed off regions that are the remediation centers, which Buddha and Dante Alighieri would call the 9 circles of hell. And they really exist. And, it is true, as some New Agers say. I've heard some people say this, again, this guy, Matthias de Stefano on Gaia, that the hell is created by your mind. And that's true, but it's kind of a half-assed definition. The hell actually exists, but you basically, anybody who goes to hell volunteers to go there because your heart and your spirit and your being will give you a million warnings. Okay? And if you don't heed those warnings, what you're doing is you're consecrating a sentence in the hell regions. Okay? And that would be not a very good thing. Um, I heard one master, spiritual master I listen to sometimes, older guy in his 90s, Indian guy. He was describing it one time and he said, a minute in hell is like a month on earth. Right? That's how slowly and painfully time moves in hell. I don't know. I'm just passing on something I heard. But it ties into the concept of spiritual protection. Okay? Now, as I said a moment ago, some of you have never been psychically attacked or paranormally attacked. And you may think that when people talk about this, that it's somehow a kind of a metaphor or it's a psychological thing. You get into a bad mood or something like that. No, it's real. It's literal. It can be physical. Okay? It can be physical. You can be poked and prodded. You can be pushed to the ground. It can be quite severe in certain circumstances. The internal state can be quite chaotic. You feel like you're drowning in your thoughts and your feelings. Now, a psychiatrist or a psychologist might call it acute depression, chronic depression, um, some other thing from I forget what they call the book. Is it the American Diagnostic Journal, ADJ? I can't remember. Manual of, you know what? Because I gotta look this up because I'm a bit of a, again, like I'm a language Nazi, right? So, what is the book that gives all the diagnoses in mental health? The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM, and specifically the DSM-5-TR, comrade. All right. So, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM. That's what it's called. But it's actually real. It amazes me with everything I've experienced in my life that this is not publicly known and publicly spoken about, that it's all a bunch of bullshit. And then I take 2 steps back and I go, well, I guess I've had a very blessed life to be able to figure these things out. And I've had a tremendous amount of help and assistance from benign, invisible forces and beings. I'm not even sure who or what they are. A Buddhist might call them devas. A Christian might call them angels. Somebody else might call them ascended masters. Some other people might say they're benign extraterrestrials. I really don't know. I keep saying this and people think I don't know, being dramatic or um, obtuse or something like that. I'm interested in living my life and growing my spiritual consciousness in connection with my life. I'm interested in dealing with each moment and getting from it as much as I can. If it's a negative moment, I ask myself, what is there to learn here? I ask myself, what karma am I burning off or working through? And I try to stay positive about everything in my life. And my life's literally an open book at this point. You can pretty much figure out everything between the nonfiction in The Devil in Us and the fiction in God as an Economist. Okay? And that's pretty much my whole life. Not every detail, but probably more than would come up in an afterlife review. Let's put it that way. um, and the reason I know that these things are not psychological is they tie off in certain ways. So you get you get corroborations. They're very demonstrative. It's not your imagination. It's not a fanciful thing like, oh, signs and wonders. No, it's way more precise than that. Okay? Way more precise than that. All right, let's circle back. So, a psychic attack might begin as a distressed thinking pattern. You cannot get a hold of your thinking pattern. You cannot calm down. You can't get your breathing calmed down. It's almost like PTSD. You see it in asylums, right? They capture it perfectly in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. All those guys in there are except Randall P. McMurphy, who's just a regular criminal, played by Jack Nicholson, but all the other ones they're all under extreme psychic attack. I shouldn't say extreme, but persistent psychic attack. And you can see it and you see this in all the people that we define as mentally imbalanced or mentally ill. You'll see a loop that they're in. And it just keeps coming up and coming up and coming up and coming up. Okay? Yeah, I don't know if you've ever spent a lot of time around a man who's going through a divorce. It's particularly difficult if there's children involved. They will go through this loop where you'll listen to them and they'll exhaust everything they have to say, and then you wake up the next day or the next time you meet them at a Starbucks for a coffee, like 3-4 days later, they do the whole thing again like they never had the conversation with you in the first place. That's the first sign of psychic attack. Okay? And it just goes from there. And it's not, I'm giving the example of divorce because I've been through that myself. I know what that feels like, right? It's a tremendous sense of violation to have your progeny taken from you. You just know in your bones that by all natural law this isn't right. Now there can be things that happen in certain forms of I wouldn't say necessarily attack, but there's a lot of beings that can communicate with you directly through dreams. And some living human beings can do this, like accomplished Satanists and black magicians. They can come at you in your dreams. Um, I should say that I'm not trying to scare anybody, and there's nothing really to be scared of here. Okay? It's not like people operate as though there's no consequence. There is consequence to action. Okay? There's profound consequence to action. But I think we're just in a point of time where some people who are very negative know that there's no chance they can turn it around. They've done too much. And whether they understand it literally or just intuitively, they know we're going through this cycle and there's a big split coming and it's a kind of point of no return. So they're just doubling down on their negativity. They just don't care anymore. They don't care. There's absolutely no hesitancy. They're operating as though they're going to be completely destroyed as a soul, as a being, and they don't care. It's a false bravado, only maintained by the body. The moment the shield of the body and the various techniques for psychic and spiritual shielding, which means protection from their own guilt, their own conscience, which they've put away, but you can't really put it away. While you're in the body, you can forget about it. But when you get out of the body, you realize that you never really escaped your conscience. And your conscience becomes your own judge, jury, and executioner. It's all done within the framework of our own conscience. But while we're in a body, we can do all these things and convince ourselves that there's a different way that things work. But there isn't. There's just the one way. And realizing this teaches humility, submission, and obedience to the divine. Okay? And starts to create an individual that's of true service to themselves and to others. And I don't mean to overdo it with the religious language, but I find the religious language kind of beautiful and poetic, and I like it. I could use different language for people who don't like that language, you know, but I think it's okay, and I think that the language can be salvaged and extracted from the controllers who've done all their spells with it. You know, some people go off and create their whole new language structure. Again, Uncle Cliff's an example, Cliff High, right? Ontology, grit, materium. Pay specific attention to the lengths that Cliff goes to create his own language. I think it's noble. I think it's very clean, and I think it's very useful. And he can reach a lot of people with this new language. But at the same time, all the people trapped in the old language need a lifeline thrown to them too. And that can be done by repurposing the old language or giving it back its original dignity by decimating false definitions and program definitions of God and spirit and soul and hell, and modernizing them by explicating the proper definition of what these things are. And because so many people are embedded in that language, if you can turn the language, think of it like in the spy game, turning somebody. Like when the KGB in the Cold War would turn an MI6 agent and get them to work for the KGB as a double agent. That's a tremendous asset for the KGB, and vice versa. MI6 getting a KGB agent to flip and become a double agent. Okay? That's pretty much the whole Cold War explained, by the way. And it's the same thing with people trapped in this language and not interpreting it correctly. Okay, so there's purpose and utility in the old language. I'm not gonna run away from it. And again, I find it kind of beautiful. I'm not afraid of the word God, even even though I don't think anything approximating what 99.99999% of the people who use that word think it is. It isn't. It doesn't matter. I can still use the word so long as I give my definition. It's the living multidimensional membrane we live within, and that which powers and sustains it all. That's God. Okay? And anything that you might consider angelic or like invisible individuated consciousness or beings, angels, stuff like that. We could say that this is anything in the living membrane that is working towards the advancement of all beings, towards merging back with the unity of it all. Why do you have to complicate things? That's my definition of an angel. you know, um, you know, warrior angels are probably extraterrestrials. You know, I think the angel paradigm was given to us by the Pleiadians. That's my theory, anyways. Which is an extraterrestrial construct, right? So there's tremendous value in the old language. Tremendous value, and I'm not going to give up on it. So the beginning of a psychic attack is you'll notice the person goes into this repetition. And then when you get, and all of this is still just sort of DSM stuff. It's what you could still like see a person doing this and just think they're having a mental health issue, an anxiety attack, or some other rather neutral, neutered, disconnected, and diagnostic way of defining what they're going through. Now, as the tension increases, that repetition cycle will increase. So I gave the example of going for a coffee with your friend who's going for a divorce, going for another coffee with them in a week, and they tell you everything they told you the last coffee, but you realize as their friend, they just need to repeat themselves. They need to release this energy, and the only way they can do it is by speaking. And that energy just keeps coming, right? So there you go. Now, as that energy or that psychic attack increases, that cycle will get tighter and tighter. And it'll get to the point where the person it's almost like PTSD. The person is just repeating. And then you'll get the mumbling. And total loss of concentration. You ask them to do a simple task like repeat something, repeat after me, and it's very simple, no more than 10 or 15 words, and conceptually very simple, and they get halfway through and what did you say again? What did you say? And they're not even listening to you. And then you ask yourself, well, why did you call me for help if you're not even going to listen to what I'm saying? If you're in such a state that you can't even hear me, what do you want me to do for you? Okay? And then there's another stage of psychic attack or paranormal attack, where, as I said, it's physical. And a lot of people who get abducted report this as well. The gray aliens, and then they'll wake up the next day with marks on their body. And but you can be attacked in such a way that you're poked and prodded in your bed. Very often happens when you're in bed, and very often when you're right in that state of mind before you're going to go to sleep. You're not quite asleep, you're not quite awake, and then it'll happen. There's something about that frequency and the waves in your brain that the entities can get in there and attack you. And I've been through all of this. Okay? Years ago. I've had at least one of every experience on this planet almost. And especially all the stuff you read about in spiritual and paranormal and occult literature. I've had one of everything. It's like I'm the guy who's tried all 31 flavors at Baskin Robbins. But I can't repeat any of them, because my life has been guided and structured in a way that I was put through all these experiences so I could speak authoritatively about them. So I had them all. Okay? Demonic attacks, everything. Okay? Before I made my peace with the demonic legions. As we all should. And then there's another kind of attack. I call it, and this is the scariest one, I call it the sandbag or the Shanghai. It's where, and this usually happens after they've been softening you up for a number of weeks with nocturnal attacks. And then at a certain point, they will literally try to take you completely. And this is like an intense anxiety attack. This is like, you're like that dude in the Dutch painting, The Scream, like this. And you're in the fight of your life. And whether you win or not depends on the core energy you have, because all your thinking processes are going to go away. And that core energy is built up by spiritual practice. Okay? That's how it's built up. It's built up by spiritual practice. Now, as a general rule, if you find yourself at stage 1, which is just the incessant repetition, and you're OCDing about something, obsessive compulsive disorder, what you want to do is you want to match that OCD to a very simple and repetitive spiritual practice. So it could just be saying a short prayer with beads. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Hail Mary, full of grace. Or the Japji if you're a Sikh, or whatever the prayer, or if you've memorized one of the Psalms that has particular meaning for you, go with that. Or anything that has meaning for you. But what you're doing is you're dominating the moment by maintaining control of it. Do you understand? Remember, God is in the present. It's always here and now. When your here and now is being attacked, psychic attack, you have to reassert the primacy of the moment. And you do that at the first level by very simple spiritual exercises. It could be mantras, very powerful at this time. Sit down and do an Om. Do it for 30 minutes and just keep repeating it. And the thing that's fighting you in your head and saying, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, That's the negative entity. Okay? That's the negative entity. So you got to do all these things. They sound stupid. And in the modern age, we think too much. And we think it's stupid to work a set of beads. We think it's stupid to do mantra. We think it's stupid to repeat simple prayers because we're so fucking smart. Well, let me tell you, as an experiencer, you will not be so fucking smart when you get attacked. Okay? And if you go serious on path, meaning you start to take your spiritual life very seriously, and what do I mean by very seriously? It's a daily practice. You generally keep it to yourself. You don't talk about it. And it equals or exceeds a minimum of an hour a day. And that's just the actual spiritual exercise, the prayer, the meditation. Then you'll start compounding it with fasting, the reading of scripture, going for long walks and reciting prayer or mantra or tonal prayer, hymns or songs, which are very powerful too. And then all of a sudden, you're in between your meditation and your walking and reciting prayers while you're kneading dough to make some bread or something. You've just sort of incidentally got your spiritual practice up to 3-4 hours a day, because that all counts too. But your core exercise is when your eyes are closed and you're not going to sleep. But there's all kinds of things you can do when you're just going about your business. And you'll notice as people get more and more spiritual, whatever the system, I've seen this just happen, in my grandmothers who were, had not been all around the world, and they didn't speak multiple languages like me, and they hadn't gone on a massive investigation of the world's religions and scriptures the way I did. All they had was Catholicism. But when they got into their 80s and stuff, they were praying all the time in their own way. They would go on these long walks, they would get the rosaries out, and they got juiced up, right? It's not about what you believe, it's about what you do. Because it's all about your consciousness. And your consciousness can turn on you. And when your consciousness turns on you, you get attacked. It's not mental illness, it's an object force. Okay? You will, at a certain point, develop the ability to help other people, because the level of energy that you can encompass, the vibration that you can ground, is transmissible. That's actually the word for it in spiritual circles. Transmission. It's energy, and you can transmit it to somebody else. You know, a highly evolved practitioner could depossess somebody remotely without even talking to them, just by transmitting. Okay? Now, here's the tough part, okay? I don't like this part, but I gotta say it because it's true. We're all responsible for ourselves. And if you get attacked, you deserve it. You've done something, okay? Now, this is going to freak people out, okay? Because in everything I've seen out there, nobody talks this way. Nobody. But it's been my experience, so I'm going to tell you. If you stop and start a lot, okay? Like if you do very serious practice for 6 months, a year and a half, 2 years, and you get something happens. I don't know. Maybe you're a parent and one of your kids needs a lot of your attention or something happens, and you just sort of get taken off path. Okay? And you stop practicing. And you haven't reached that state of unfoldment in your journey where you're always protected. You just didn't get that far. Very often, these are the people who get attacked. And you could almost look upon it as the negative entities actually doing you a favor to remind you to get back into spiritual practice. Okay? And had you never done that 2 years of solid practice, you never would have come on their radar in the first place. You just would have been another anonymous human sheeple that the negative entities would leave alone. But because you lit up a little bit and stood out, they noticed you. I told you that story about the 12-week retreat I did in the cabin in Northern Ontario. It's the freakiest 12 weeks of my life. I met Jim Caviezel 2 weeks before he was going to the Middle East to film The Passion of the Christ. I met him in a donut shop at 11:30 at night. Just me and him there. Just me and him. Okay? And in that same 12-week trip, when I came home, my second night back home, there's a UFO over my house. Okay? Witnessed by another person. And it's because of how I charged myself up in that 12-week retreat. So they take note. This is the world we live in. If nothing I'm saying rings true with you, not even a little bit, you should maybe stop watching this podcast, because it could be non-beneficial for you. Okay? So there's a couple ways to look at the lazy practitioner attack. One is that they saw that you could light up and they want to scare you off and they attack you when you're weak because you stop practicing. Or the negative entities actually indirectly work for the divine hierarchy and they're trying to get you back into practice. I go with the latter based on what I learned writing The Devil in Us. Now, this is going to be a huge thing in the next... It already is now. Every day you can go on X and see the craziest shit you've ever seen, and it's real. You can see people having demonic possession attacks on the New York subway. But we call it mental health. But I ask you, look at it. Look at somebody slithering on their belly in the New York subway, hissing like a wild animal, or like a Komodo dragon, and you tell me that isn't possession. Okay? So, you know how we say that, we're going through this transition and all the lies are going to be exposed? And it's true, the lies are being exposed. Everybody's catching on to the Israel scam, the chosen people. Everybody's catching on to the Vatican scam, saved by the Vicar of Christ, right? The Muslims aren't really going through their skeptical renewal renaissance phase yet, but they're generally about 400 years behind the rest of us anyways. No offense, Muslims. I know you have a lot of PhDs and people in candidacy for Nobel Prizes, and I'm not shitting on you, but let's be honest, you're about 400 fucking years behind, okay? So you'll go through it too. You're just not caught up yet. You're in You're in the slow class. You're in special ed. Um, well, part of this truth and reconciliation we're going to go through is going to be extremely ugly. And there's going to be a certain kind of person, I'm not sure what percentage of society, but significant, like double digit, 10% or more. It could be as high as 50. I don't know. It's not like I'm riding the New York or the Toronto subway every day around thousands of people getting a read on things. I live in a fucking earthbag house in the middle of the rainforest with my wife, a bunch of nieces and nephews I love to death, 2 pit bulls, 6 cats, and a bunch of crazy fucking brothers-in-law who go pig hunting with dogs. It's not like I got the lay of the land, right? I'm not there. I don't know. But I think it's going to be fairly significant when there's going to be like supply chain disruptions nobody has factored into their thinking because everything costs money, right? What happens when there's a supply chain disruption in the pharmaceuticals? What's going to happen when people realize they're not mentally ill, they're spiritually bothered? Are they going to freak out? What's going to happen to all the secular people with their master's degrees and PhDs living in their rational Richard Dawkins worlds, atheist or agnostic worlds, thinking they know everything? And they're going to dramatically find out how fucking stupid they are. I shouldn't say stupid. I mean, remember my definitions, right? They have they have memory sequence and conceptualization. They can recite what they learned. They can sound smart, but they're perceptually they're morons. And this is epidemic now. It's part of the material pornography of which science, including social sciences and transgenderism and wokeness and all this stuff comes out of the university system and it comes out of the social sciences. Well, we're going through a process now where people thinking one way or another isn't going to matter. What is going to happen is I'm not going to say spiritual, but the multidimensional reality is going to push through. It's already with the drones, the lights in the skies, all of that stuff. Okay? And that's not necessarily extraterrestrial. Remember, there's life everywhere. There it for some reason it's choosing now to show itself and express itself. Okay? Yes, some of them are advanced military drones. Okay? Area 51 drones, we'll call them. I knew about these things. John Edmonds told me about them in like 2019. But that doesn't explain all of them. Okay? Not at all. Nowhere near all of them. There's a genre of YouTuber out there now, many of them with like 1 million subscribers. Man, I haven't even broken 300 yet. But I consider myself one of the best podcasters out there. I really do, and I'm not being egotistical. But mine is more of a New Yorker crowd. New Yorker in the 70s when Pauline Kael was doing the movie reviews. Not the woke New Yorker or Atlantic of 2025, which is shitheel media. It's been shitheel media for about 25, 30 years now, since the mid-90s. It all went downhill. But we're going to have this breakthrough moment, right? Where everybody's going to realize there's a multi-dimensional game going on. And how would I put this? I think societally, in a non-religious way, meaning we're not going to make anything more of it than what it is. I think we're going to punch through death. I think it will somehow be proven that we don't actually die. And the body dies, and the modality of communication, our vocal cords, our physical presence, our ability to have agency in this world leaves, but we do not. We just go to another frequency. Now, spiritual people, people who meditate, know this. But the vast majority of people do not know this. What's going to happen when that becomes a public thing? You know, when Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ came out, the rabbis warned us that there would be all kinds of negative consequences because of the acute anti-Semitism and this and that. People were turning themselves in for 10-year-old murders they got away with. I shit you not. Okay? So I don't know how this is all going to go, how it's all going to play out. But this is what we're leading to. This I know. We're leading to a critical moment where the physicality of existence is knocked off its perch as the absolute penultimate of human existence. And we're going to begin to slide into a reality where life is understood to be continual or perpetual and taking place in and out of a body. And then from that, we're going to move to a new cosmology, much more scientific, a new theology. Now, this isn't around the corner. I think we're going to have to go through all the temple bullshit to get there. Because this temple bullshit has to be cleared out of the way. And this Jewish nonsense has to be dealt with. Because if what these rabbis are saying is the only religion that's going to be allowed in the human experience under Noahide law, that's not a victory for humanity. That's a lockdown, right? A different kind of lockdown, a different kind of Aldous Huxley, George Orwell nightmare, Fabian fucking nightmare, Fabian socialist nightmare. But I don't think they win. In fact, I would say I know they don't. But I can't prove that to you, so I'll just say I don't think they're going to win. So the best way to protect yourself, and also the way the entities will come at you and attack you, is any weakness or guilt in you. You know? Remember, go right back to The Exorcist, you know, the William Friedkin movie with Max von Sydow and I don't know the name of the actor who played Father Damien Karras. He hasn't done many movies, but that one will live in infamy, so he well served. But remember when the demon pantomimes his mother and goes after his deepest guilt? Damie, why you leave me? Why you leave me, Damie? Because his mother died in an old age home and he wasn't there to hold her hand or take care of her, and he's Italian. It's his deepest guilt, and the demon knows that. That's how it's going to start. So you got to, as a general spiritual process, you want to have all your shit cleaned up. Okay? Because if there's any threads to pull on, you're going to get torn apart, man, in what's coming. It's already begun. Okay? It's already begun. I shouldn't say what you're going to be dealing with. You're already dealing with it, you know? And why did I do this podcast tonight? Well, because of the people I talked to off air. Okay? And I suspect that they're a representative, a sampling of everybody, the 500 people who listen to me between Spotify, Substack, and YouTube. Okay? So you gotta deal with your shit. You gotta make your peace with it. You gotta untie your karmic knots. You gotta get the energy flowing in the qigong sense, in the spirit sense. You gotta get it flowing, and you can't get bottled up. Not now, because you'll blow up, man. You'll blow up, and they'll come in and they'll eat you like a school of sharks. These entities, and they're real. It's an object phenomenon. So we'll call this one. What are we going to call this one? Spiritual self-defense in the end times. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review. Back to the temple tomorrow, I promise. But I needed to do this one tonight because of the 3 or 4 hours I spent speaking to people today. Peace out.